And with that, I would like to turn it over to Dr. Vanessa Gray.
Good afternoon, everybody. Happy Monday. So glad that you're joining with us today. We have a special guest. One of our division team members, Dylan James, is an archivist here, and he's going to be sharing some wonderful information about legislative research and tracking tools. So I will let him take the reins and welcome, Dylan. Thank you so much for your time.
Yep, thanks, Vanessa. Thanks for the introduction. So I'm going to go ahead and just share my screen here uh, right now, and hopefully you guys can see the PowerPoint that we have going. Is that working out?
Yes, looks good.
All right. So today we're going to be talking about doing legislative research, which is one of the number one things that we do at the state archives as far as reference archivists. So we're going to go through and we will discuss, first of all, the purpose behind legislative research. So the main purpose is to determine the intent behind a specific bill. This can aid in things like litigation. It can aid in drafting new bills. Sometimes the legislature is working on something that they had worked on in the past, and they may want to see, hey, how did previous legislatures approach this? It can also be used in academic research. Sometimes things come up in current events. Reporters, journalists also want to have a bill's history. So the first thing that you need to know before you can get at legislative intent, which is usually committee reports and staff analysis, is that you need to know the bill number in the year. So for instance, you might have SB 100 from the year 1995. So once you know the year of the bill, um, you can tell the manner that it can be researched. So for instance, down here at the bottom, bills from 1998 onward can be researched on the Florida Senate's website. And you would just pick the year and the bill, and you could enter that in, and you could find staff analysis in the bill's history and different drafts. Bills between 1969 and 1997 can be researched remotely or in person. So if you were to call us at the state archives, or if you were to send us an email and say, for instance, hey, I want the staff analysis for SB 100 from 1981, uh, we could go ahead and see if we could research that remotely, or you're welcome to come in and research from that time period too. And then the last category we have is pre-1969 bills, and those can only be researched in person at the R.A. Gray building. And the reason for that is before the 1968 Constitution was ratified, records weren't kept in the same manner, and it's not as easy for archivists to go in and find staff analysis on a specific bill. So for that, it's a little bit more in depth. Sometimes you're looking through multiple boxes, and it's a little bit harder to find. But in the presentation today, we're going to go ahead and we're going to go through and we're going to give examples of how to find, legislative history, uh, staff analysis that shows intent from these three different periods. Any questions before we move forward? All right. So sometimes when you're doing legislative research, you may only know the chapter law number. So a bill that passes is assigned a chapter law number. And this comes up quite often when someone says, hey, I want to do research on chapter 65 -1. So ultimately, we're still going to need to know the bill number to be able to do research. But there's a website that you can use, and it's down here. And we're going to go ahead and switch over here, and I can show you what I'm talking about. So if we're looking for, say, for instance, 65-1, you would click on this 65-1 here. And this is a range, by the way. So you have chapter 65-1 through chapter 65-287. And that just means, hey, it's the year 1965, and this is, this bill that passed, and it was assigned chapter law number 1. So if you go in here, you could do a Control F, We'll see if this works. Oh, there it is, 65-1, and we can see that that is House Bill number 172 from that year. So this means that House Bill number 172 actually passed, and it was assigned this chapter law number. So generally speaking, we do need this bill number and year, which we'd call HB 172 from 1965 to do research. So we will switch back here to the PowerPoint. All right, another situation that can arise is that sometimes you know the statute, and a statute can be created or amended by a chapter law number. So we have this example down here. So we're looking at this statute, and it's one, establishing a state motto, and that's something that would be there every year until changed, right? So how do we go ahead and get legislative history on this? How would we find the legislature's intent? Well, we could look down here at the bottom, and we'd have a history note. And here we get chapter 2006-282, which corresponds to House Bill number 1145. So you could use the same process that we just did using the Laws of Florida website, except this time you would click on the year 2006, and you could do a Control F for 2006-282, and it's going to tell you that it's House Bill 1145 from 2006. So this 2006 bill falls within our range of 1998 to the present. So if we used this as an example, and you could, from the beginning, you could say hypothetically, hey, we wanted the legislative intent behind this statute. So we went ahead and we looked at the statute and we looked at the history note, and then we figured out the bill. And then you could go to the Florida Senate's website. So you could go to flsenate.gov, and you would scroll down to 2006, and then you would put in 1145, and the numbers are unique here, whether or not it's a Senate bill or a House bill. So you don't have to worry about that. You can just put in the number, and then what you're going to get is a web page that looks something like this, and it'll have different tabs for amendments and vote history, and analysis is what you want for intent. So the analysis is the same thing essentially as a committee report, and you'll have down here Gov Ops Committee, and you can click on the PDF, and then you can read through it, and you can see how that committee addressed that bill. So we could switch over again, and we could go through that process just a little bit if this wants to allow me. So go to the Senate's website here, and it was, what was it, 2006, and it was 1145, and we'll click go. And that's going to give us a web page that has the bill history here. This will tell everything that it went through in the House, everything that it went through in the Senate. You've got related bills. You can get copies of bill text, different amendments. You can get the different analyses here, and if you click on those, it will bring you to a staff analysis, which can show you, legislative intent. All right, so I'll switch back to the presentation here. So that is the first time period, and that's very easy. So that's something that you can just do on your own. If you have the bill number, you can go to the Florida Senate's website and you can pull up all of that history, so long as it's from 1998 forward. We're also happy to help, if you had a bill from that time period and you needed a little bit of help. We'd be more than happy to help if you called us or you sent us an email, and then we could find the link to the analysis for you. All right, so bills between 1969 and 1997 are a little bit more complicated, because that information is not online. So if you think about the history of the internet, it really started cranking in the late 90s, and they were able to put things online more or less as it was created. But in this period here, the legislature would go and they would do their thing, and they would pass bills, and different committees would work on those bills, and then those things would get archived in boxes, right? So those boxes would come in periodically, and they're different committees. So we're going to use this example of HB 58 from 1978. So to be able to find the staff analysis for this bill, we would have to use these volumes here. So we have a set of these volumes in the Library and Archives reading room. I actually imaged this one here from 1978 just to give you guys an example of what it looks like. So you'd open it up and you'd go to the page for HB 58. Sometimes they just put an H or an S for House or Senate. And this will show the history. So this is actually that same sort of history that was on the Senate's website, just in a printed form here. So the way that we would find it from there is you would see it went through on October 13th, 1977. It went through the House Committee on Criminal Justice. And it looks like they created this committee report that said it was favorable with amendments. Well, this date right here then would tell archivists, hey, there was paper materials produced on that date. And then we have different indexes and citators, and this will lead us to those archival boxes. So once we've identified an archival box, this is where we can find the staff analysis, and this is where we can find legislative intent. So this is an example of the staff analysis for this one. And this is a bill, and we'll read it here to find the legislative intent. It says, introducer feels that such a humanoid creature is in need of protection. So several persons have reportedly cited ape-like animals in the swamps of South Florida. So this was actually a bill that the legislature did as kind of a joke, right? So the swamp ape is the same thing as Bigfoot or the Yeti or the Sasquatch. And this actually went through this committee, and we can actually find it using the legislative history, except this bill didn't pass in reality because they were just kind of having fun, right? All right, so this would be an example from that time period between 1969 and 1977, where you'd actually have to go through the physical books and then identify the boxes. Any questions about this process so far?
I'm sorry, can I just ask a quick question?
Yeah.
When you showed the statute, 15, I forget the number, and below it says history, and it said S.1, and then it said chapter 2006. What does the S.1 stand for?
Well, let's
You go back to the
back.
statute.
Yeah, let's go back and take a look. And sorry, it's got this, oh, there we go.
Yeah.
So I believe this means section 1, chapter 2006 dash.
Oh, so it's actually referring to the section in that particular chapter.
I believe so, yes.
Okay.
And if we go to the Senate's website here, we could look at a PDF.
Oh,
and yes, section 1 is the state motto, because it appears to be a bill that maybe does other things beyond that. So the history note's going to show you specifically
specific sections.
Yep.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Yep. You're welcome. All right. Back to our presentation here. I wanted to let all of you know that we can also look up legislative audio, right? So using the same process to find staff analysis and committee reports, you can also find audio of floor debates, Senate and House floor debates, and also audio of committee meetings. If you go to the floridachannel.com, you can actually find videos of legislative floor debate and committee meetings, but it's really only useful for like the late 2000s onwards. So before that, you'll have to go through the archives, and we could either find it on a CD if it's early 2000s, and then before that, it was on cassette tapes. But we can make copies of legislative audio as well, because sometimes a researcher won't find something that they were looking for in a staff analysis, and they say, well, hey, what if they actually talked about it verbally in a committee meeting? What if they actually discussed it on the floor? So you always have that option too. All right. So the last category, the last time period we have is for pre-1969 legislative research. So this is more difficult because not only are these records not online, they also can't be researched using those red volumes. So we actually don't even have those red volumes with those nice little histories in there where we can pick out dates. The records from before 1969, before the new Constitution was ratified, are more unorganized. For instance, you may find something on a bill within a collection on Speaker of the House papers or something like that. So you have to be a little bit more creative in looking. But we do have a guide to legislative records, and if you come into the archives, archivists can definitely help you look for those records. So if you go here, and this is on our website, and you click on legislative records, you will get this guide to legislative research. So it will explain a history of the legislature more in depth. It will also explain why pre-1969 research is more difficult, but then it also gives you a list of different collections that might be useful in doing research with pre-1969 records. So for instance, here you have Senate bill files, but they're only 1845 to 1927. Generally, when you're looking in these boxes, they're more unorganized. The later records, you'll have files that actually name specific bills, and you'll have different dates, and you can go find the records a lot more easily, but these records are a little bit more unorganized. It's sort of time consuming. So if you do need to do pre-1969 legislative research, you would have to visit the archives, and then we would be happy to, help you identify series and pull boxes for you and sit down and help you. All right, so lastly, it is possible to track the progress of current bills that the legislature is working on, and I like to use the Senate website for that as well. You can also use the House of Representatives website, but to do that, you would just go back to the Senate website, and we're here. Do 2025, and I'm just gonna, I don't know a bill off the top of my head. Let's see. Yeah, here's one, SB 100. You could find, the bill history, and that's going to kind of show you where it is. So it looks like February 12th, 2025, it was in community affairs. That was the last action. So if you know the bill that, you're interested in, you can go ahead and type it in manually. There's also a bill tracking feature that the Senate website has that you can sign up for. So if you put in your email and you register, this will sort of track items of interest, right? And it will give you updates and emails, and it will let you know. So if you're tracking a lot of different issues or a lot of different bills, this might be worth your time signing up for. All right, does anyone have any other questions for me on any of the processes involved? Does anybody want to see something again? Any clarification on anything? I do want to let you know if you're interested in conducting either remote research or visiting the archives, you can contact us at this email here. It's archives@dos.myflorida.com, and either me or one of my colleagues will be in touch with you, and we can talk to you about your research and see if it can be a remote request, and if it was something too robust, we might suggest that you actually come in and visit. We also have a plan your visit page here. All right. Any other questions? Anything you all need to see again? Was it straightforward?
Yes. Very. Isabel, how are you?
What was that?
I said, how are you?
All right. That concludes what I have here for today.
All
You-
right. I'm sorry. Yeah, please.
No, I'm sorry.
Questions?
It's a
Questions?
delayed reaction to a question. So like sometimes when you're looking up a bill and it's like it's hard to tell what's died. you
Oh,
know?
okay. Yeah.
Like how can you tell so, sometimes it'll say tabled, or sometimes I don't always understand what the last line is. Like, is
Yeah,
this
yeah.
dead? Is this coming up again?
I think generally speaking, it may say, if it's died in a committee. And generally speaking, I don't think that would come up again. As far as it being tabled, I can't give you a definitive answer as to what that means.
Okay. I mean, just like sometimes it's just like it's been so many months.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna assume it's dead, even if it doesn't say that. I don't. I'm not always sure.
We have a book that has it's like a guide to legislative language. I've definitely seen that a bunch, but
Okay.
if it's died in committee, I don't feel like it comes up again. If it's tabled, I'm not exactly certain if it does.
Okay, so that's actually was my next question, because sometimes you'll see, you don't know, like CS might stand for committee substitute.
Right.
You may not always understand the language. So like if there's a guide of what,
There is a book that has, it's like a guide to legislative language.
Okay.
If you email the archives inbox, I can definitely send you the title to
Okay.
that book.
All right. Thank you.
Yep.
And we have a couple questions in the chat. Do other places have those volumes 1969 through 1998, or do you have to go to Tallahassee?
That's a really good question. I think that the legislature created those volumes, so I'm not certain how mass produced it was. You could try contacting, I think the legislature has like a printing office to see if they're able to make, back volumes. But again, yeah, I don't have a definitive answer to that.
All right. And the next question, could you show how you would research HB 1557, I think in 2022?
Certainly, we can do that. All right, so 2022. And you said it was 1552?
1557?
All right. Yep, so that's how you do it. You would just pick, the year, and then you would type in the bill number, and you would get, all of the information that we covered. So bill history, related bills, amendments, analyses, sponsors. Here you can tell that, it did become law, and it became chapter 2022 -22. So that's one of those ones from 1998 forward that's very easy to research, and you're going to be able to pull up, a lot of information fairly quickly.
So for the committee substitutes for this one, it would be under amendments or maybe bill text.
Yeah, so we should be able to see the committee substitutes here. So let's look here. So favorable with committee substitute by education 1/20/2022. And let's see if we can find where that came in.
I think I saw it under fill text. No, never mind. It says C1, C2. Is that the committee substitute?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm just trying to see here. Hang on. So that it would be a date of interest for us here. And we could potentially see it here. Let's. Yeah, that's a good question. Where exactly you could find it, sort of interjected here. So it is just the committee's, suggestion and substitute. Yeah, let's go. Education and Employment Committee. Yeah, so this may be it actually here when you're looking at this staff analysis, because it's saying the committee substitute for the committee substitute of HB 1557 passed the House on February 24th, 2022. So you would just have to delve through all of the different staff analysis and stuff to find it. All right, any other questions? No takers?
Awesome. Thank you so much, Dylan. That was an excellent presentation. I learned a lot. And I enjoyed hearing the questions that people were asking, because just want to let y'all know, when we have these topics, it comes from you. So if you have any other ideas or topics you'd like to share with us, please feel free to reach out to us, and we'll try to make that happen for you. Thank you so much, Dylan. We have a vast amount of subject matter experts here, and we always want to showcase the services that the state provides. So hopefully you enjoyed that. And if you have any questions after the presentation, please feel free to reach out to Dylan, reach out to me, or anyone in the continuing education team, and we'll be sure to share that information with those subject matter experts. So as always, this time is for you. We don't necessarily have to stay on topic. We can also discuss other things that might be beneficial or pressing on your minds. So please feel free to either post in the chat any questions or any comments, or take yourself on mute and ask your question or share anything that might be going on in your areas and any happenings, events that you might be having. Please feel free. This is your time.
I would be interested in hearing if anyone's willing to share, partly for my own curiosity, but how do you, your staff, or your patrons, how do you guys utilize legislative research? What are people working with?
I used to be the government librarian for the Palm Beach County Library System. So I would occasionally get questions for people who wanted to understand a little bit about the history of a law. So yeah, I would work with the Florida statutes. We also have Nexus Uni, which has the Florida statutes annotated, which I encourage people to use. But I would do basically what Dylan showed if I could find the chapter, and then that led me to the House bill. But I had kind of limited resources. There was a lot of stuff I couldn't see on my end, but you know, it was always encouraging to see people wanting to know more about the history of a law. So
Yeah, I want to say I recently discovered the Florida statutes annotated. We have a copy over at the Capitol branch, and I found that very useful just because it shows a lot of background information on the different statutes. Stuff that wouldn't necessarily be found in like committee reports and staff analysis, like further sort of things, how courts ruled, how different people commented on the statute. So I haven't had a lot of experience with those volumes, but I thought they were interesting.
Thank you, guys.
Are there any other questions or comments anyone would like to share?
Um,
Hello, Margaret. Did you have a
Yeah.
question?
can you hear me?
Yes,
Can-
we can hear you now.
Okay. I have a question. We were given the Florida Senate 2012 Florida statutes at a meeting the other day to talk about disqualification from employment. And I thought, I wonder if these are, and what you had said is, you know, you go by the title, the chapter, and the section 315, but I thought I remembered like about, I think it was about 2 or 3 years ago, they made all the media specialists in Palm Beach County or in the state take a workshop online, an online workshop. We all had to have it, and we all had to send in our record that we took it. And I'm thinking now, well, I think it had to do with the pandemic and the books and the things that we had to make sure that these kind of books weren't, and to get rid of that and all that. But what I've discovered is that as I went around to different places to see how other people reacted to that, a lot of libraries in Palm Beach County and around got rid of books. And I would say, where are all your books? Did you replace? And they said, no, we really don't have the money. And I said, how did you dispose of them? And they said, well, in the district, they just gathered them up and then put weeded on the front. And then, and this was on older books and things like that. But I went to some local, like the Riviera Beach Library, and they said, well, there have been 3 librarians here since we came in. We don't know how they got rid of the books and where I said, where did they, because I didn't know where to put them, you know, like I have old outdated or, you know, doggy ones that you wouldn't throw in the trash or anything, but I don't know like how to dispose. But that was in the suggested, they didn't even say anything about how to dispose of them, just that you can't throw them out, that you can put them aside and send them back to the district, because originally they belonged to the district or to the people. So that was, I got them all ready, but then once we got them ready, you can't even lift the boxes, and they couldn't send any more. There were so many down at the district. So that's my question. Like I thought, well, who knows how to get rid of books, you know? And that should, I know it's a law, but what do they do with them? Anybody know?
We have a weeding policy for the Palm Beach County Library System. I don't know about the school district.
I'm saying the state. Was this a state rule or just a policy directive?
I'd have to look at the policy. I'm assuming it's just the policy they developed from collection development. I don't have it in front of me though. I don't know if they're actually quoting a statute.
Okay. I didn't know whether there was a law to, dispose of books.
Are you talking about legal materials, about things that these books that would have been legislative histories that came from the state?
Well, we know that, but I thought all directives that have to do with education come from library information science or a library and information. So I thought you would know. Library information services. Or is your division just the legal part?
I mean, unfortunately, I can't answer any of those questions just as a reference archivist. So that's outside of my area of expertise.
All right. What do you do with the old legal books then? Or the other words,
you could try sending an email to one of our librarians and seeing if they have an answer, because we're kind of, split between archivists and librarians, and I don't really deal with published materials. But you can email their inbox and see if they have an answer. I think it's info@dos.fl.gov.
let me ask you this. Do you have, like, in other words, are you only dealing with things that are saved?
Yeah, as an archivist, it's non-published stuff. So yeah,
Right,
it could be like business correspondence, letters, government records, like, the
Oh.
bill analysis. So stuff that's saved that wasn't mass produced. Yeah.
So this is Sarah Erickson. I'm the Regional Government Documents Librarian at the University of Florida. And so if they were materials that were distributed from the Federal Depository Library Program, so from the federal government, then there are different procedures.
This is Florida Senate stuff. It's Florida Senate statutes.
Well, the Florida Senate stuff can actually be both, because you may have staff analysis and stuff that's fairly unique that wasn't sent out everywhere, and that can be put into committee boxes, and there may be limited copies of those, especially the farther back that you go. But if it's like a report that it was produced by the legislature, it may be with the library. So stuff from the legislature can be found in the archives or the library, just depending on whether or not it's considered a published work that was mass produced or not.
All right, thank you.
Thank you for those questions. Does anyone else have any questions or comments? And as I mentioned before, it doesn't necessarily have to be about this particular topic. We can talk about anything.
Do you guys do any collection of county level material in the like county level legislation or records?
Here at the state archives, generally speaking, we don't do a lot of local level records. We do have limited local records on microfilm, things like old deed records or old court records There are a few things that we do get. We get county ordinances. So if a county passes an ordinance on a subject, we do have a collection on those. We get municipal charters if they amend the charter, but generally speaking, we don't collect local level records. So like we wouldn't collect like county court or circuit court records. And oftentimes that's, a question that we get, hey, do you have, this case file for this civil or criminal case? And we only have the case files for the Florida Supreme Court. So we have to refer them back to that local court. The same thing with a lot of local, like municipal records. So generally speaking, no, we don't have a lot of local level records. It's mostly state level records.
Yeah, actually, it was the two brief caveats that we began with the microfilm and the county ordinances that I think would be of most interest. But yeah, I assume that it's also limited by, you might have better collections from certain areas than other areas.
Yeah, and I think it also depends just on our collections policy and what we're required to collect. So for instance, with all the legislative records, we have to take those in, right? Because we're the depository for state records. But as far as a lot of local records, they're not required necessarily to archive them with us. There are certain things that they do have to. Without getting into interpreting like the legal, what they necessarily have to by law and what they don't. But yes, certain things will come in from localities, but most things won't. Yeah.
Thanks.
I will say I did get to use the states. I think you guys had records on like county officers. Somebody was researching the school board members going back to when the school board was first established. So I was actually able to find that. I think it was on Florida Memory, and I do appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, that's right. On Florida Memory, we have state and county officer directory, and that's something that, yeah, people use a lot, especially if somebody's from, a certain county or a certain area. They want to know, hey, who is the sheriff of this county going way back? Or hey, my uncle was a justice of the peace in this county. So we do get a lot of questions about that collection. And luckily, we've put most of that onto Florida Memory, and you can search it by location and name index. So that's an interesting one that we have online.
Okay.
For those who are not familiar with Florida Memory, I put the link in the chat for you.
Florida Memory is actually very interesting. I worked over there before I had my current job as an archivist, and I worked on digitizing records and indexing them and putting them up there. And one of the ones that I worked on for a long time, for like over a year, was the Territorial Legislative Council records. So that's actually a really interesting one too. I think there's like over 3,000 documents, most of them handwritten, from about 1822 to 1845, that just shows what the territorial legislature did. So that one's on Florida Memory, and it's actually indexed. There's a subject index, and you can type in, anything that went on there. You can type in Seminole War. You can type in, things like sheriff, justice of the peace, and it will bring up specific documents that the Legislative Council worked on. So I like taking a look at that one.
How do they keep the technology updated? Like, if you did it, let's say in 20 years, will somebody else come along? If the technology changes, like over the years, technology has changed so much. So what do they do with the old microfiche and things like that? Do they upgrade it to now, or do they keep it on that?
I'm not certain what they'll be doing with all the microfilm and microfiche. I know there is a process to digitize that. I don't know if there are any current projects to do that. Definitely with working with something like the territorial legislative council documents, those are all, like I said, from like 1822 to 1845, and they're fragile. So with a collection like that, you do want to get them digitized. That way you don't have to keep handling them, and then you would keep them in that digital format. But yeah, microfilm can degrade over time, and it would be good to be able to digitize microfilm collections. Does that
Thank you.
answer? Yeah.
Yeah, it does.
We have a little over 10 more minutes to go. Would love to hear more questions or comments that you may have.
I have to get on 95 to get home. If I don't get on there as soon as possible, I'll be there till 7 o'clock tonight. So thank you very much. I'm going to bow out. Okay.
Thank you
Thank
so much, Margaret, for joining
Bye.
us. Safe
Bye.
travels.
Oh, thanks.
All right. Does anyone have any questions, even beyond this topic? I would like to know what's going on in your area. You have any services that you'd like to share, or programs you have coming up?
Is this a question for me, Vanessa? Or
For everybody. You can, if you have any services, well, you already
yeah,
discussed your services, but any programs or events you have coming up, please feel free to share.
yeah, and we talked about legislative research. If anybody had questions about other types of research that we do, I'd be happy to answer those questions as well.
Looks like we have a question in the chat. Matthew, not related to this, but are we hosting AceCon on March 8th and 9th in a family-friendly Comic-Con style event in Palm Harbor, Florida?
That does sound very interesting. What exactly is AceCon? I went to the Tampa Bay Comic-Con this past year. That was an interesting event. Ah. So what special guests are going to be there? Because I feel like that's what makes a comic convention really interesting, is if you have celebrity guests.
Says he doesn't have the names handy.
Yeah, yeah.
And then Andrea, many thanks. Thanks for all you do to share resources and information with us. Thank you.
Yep, not a problem.
All right, we have about 9 more minutes. And if there are no further questions or comments, I want to be respectful of your time and give you back your day. But if not, if you have some more questions or comments, please feel free to share in these last 9 minutes. And thank you, Matthew, for sharing your event coming up. That sounds amazing.
Yep, you're welcome.
Thank you. You're welcome. And please keep those ideas coming. We appreciate your feedback on topics that you want to talk about. We get those through the chat, through discussions that we hold, through our feedback surveys. So we look forward to hearing more about what you would like for us to talk about during this time. And without further ado, I'm going to say thank you for coming, Dylan. We appreciate you sharing your expertise and your services with the Florida Libraries. And thank you, everybody, for joining us. We'll see you on the third Monday of each month with our DLIS discussions. Next month, we'll be talking about library research and services for incarcerated communities and their families. So we look forward to seeing you there.